Thank you. I don't know if I could top that introduction. That was wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can everybody see my screen? We're good to go?
Good to go.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. I hope everybody's having a good holiday, and it's an actual midweek. Nothing much going on, some downtime, so we can just talk about the development of the distillery. The way I've put this presentation together is I've just put a very high level overview of developing the distillery and talk a little bit about differences between distilleries and breweries and wineries. What is a distillery? So I haven't gone very deep into some of the weeds, but I love geeking out and talking about spirits. If anybody wants to know how a particular spirit is made, or the rules and regulations around it are usually pretty interesting to some people. Anyway, I've kept it short just so we can have a more interactive session, but that's the game plan right now. So Mann's Botanical Spirits, as we talked about, it's locally owned and operated. So we're located at 581 West Street. Really what we've done is we've focused on creating unique craft spirits to elevate the cocktail experience. So we've got a couple of taglines there. The one is to elevate the cocktail experience. And so there's a real movement afoot in the spirits world to go back to the old school spirits or old school cocktails. So the days of having a tall glass with lots of fruit juice and a little bit of vodka, people are now going back to a really cool Manhattan or a martini, interesting spirits, quality versus quantity. And think of some of the classic cocktails that were developed in the early 1900s or even late 1800s. They're all back in vogue now. There's a huge movement in Europe. There's been a gin distillery opening up in the UK every month for the last 6 years. It's huge gin culture now in England. Europe in general has moved more towards the cocktail area, and that's happened in the States as well. And it's starting to happen in Canada. We've got some really nice cocktail bars starting up, as opposed to I go to these places all the time, so I can say this, but in Brantford, if you want to go for chicken wings and beers, you've got about 37 choices. But this is a little different. This is more to elevate that cocktail experience and have a nice cocktail, as opposed to sit there and have 17 Bud Lights and watch the Leaf game. So, which again, I'm able to say because I'm one of those guys having chicken wings and beers once in a while. Really, our mission is to focus on a wide range of botanicals rather than a single product. And that's why we play with calling ourselves Mann's Distillery, which is our legal name. But our signage that we put up and our advertising is saying Mann's Botanical Spirits. And the reason for that is that there's some distilleries that start up and say, I want to make the best gin, I want to make the best whiskey, I want to make the best vodka around. So for example, there's a really nice distillery out in Ayr that has been around for a number of years. It's a farm distillery, and they started off just producing a gin, just an aged gin. It was a rather unique product. Now they're more into the beer, but they do have a couple of other spirits that they're playing with. There's a really nice distillery down in the beaches area of Toronto that's called Reed's, and they just do gin. That's all they do. There's a potato farm in Alliston that all they do is vodka because they're potato farmers and they produce vodka from it. But in our case, we didn't want to be limited to a particular spirit. So we called ourselves Botanical Spirits because we like playing with all different types of botanicals. And of course, botanicals include the roots, the stems, the seeds, the flowers, anything grown from botanicals. As an example, at the beginning of this year, we obviously were busy getting out some vodka and some gin. But then throughout the year, we had a farmer come to us from Governor's Road, just out by St. George, that has a Haskap berry farm. And Haskaps are a really unique product. They're a beautiful berry that's really popular in Saskatchewan and really popular in Nova Scotia, but just coming really to Ontario. And we created a Haskap liqueur from that. It's a beautiful sipping liqueur. And that was just an example of how we can take a particular botanical and make a spirit out of it. You know, we have a ginseng farmer out in Norfolk during harvest this year. We just went out and grabbed a bunch of ginseng and stuck them in vodka bottles, and they kind of look interesting. There's a big root in the bottle, but it's a unique taste. It's probably not for everybody, but it's rather unique taste. And of course, you know, strawberry rhubarb, obviously that's an easy one. We have a lot of Brentwood farms. We were out there picking strawberries for a week and a half and steaming them and juicing them. Same with the rhubarb. And so we combined the strawberry and the rhubarb and we created a gin. So those are just a few examples, and we got lots more of them, but those are a few examples of how we've taken local botanicals and we can create spirits from them. Our location here, we've designed it, it's kind of split in two. There's a production space and then there's a public side. The public side includes a tasting bar, a cocktail lounge, a classroom area, and then we do have an outside patio. I'll talk more about the patio later, just because we've got some future plans for it that have been going back and forth. So this concept really started, about 6 years ago when I started looking at distilling. And I had figured that I had learned all I could about coffee roasting and wasn't really interested in growing that business anymore. I was very interested in making spirits. And there was a new course being offered at Niagara College, and we were part of the inaugural class there. So I lobbied quite hard, bugging the person in charge there for couple of years to be part of that first class. And so I was able to attend. There was only 16 students in the first class, and that was in the 2018-2019 range. And while I was going to school, they thought I was, of course, a very old college student. They thought I was the janitor walking around campus, but it was a great experience. Niagara College itself has an excellent culinary program, and they're one of only 2 colleges in North America that have the trifecta for brewing and distilling. So they have an excellent wine program, which includes sommelier training, but includes production. They have their own vineyards there. They've had that for umpteen years. They added a brewery program about 10 years ago. So most of the brew pubs that you go to in Ontario, most of them, the brewmasters have been trained at Niagara College through their brewery program. And in 2019, they added the distillery. So they've got the trifecta. They've got wine, they've got beer, and now they have spirits. And like I said, there's only 2 colleges in North America that have all 3 of them combined. And since then, I think even the last year I was there, they added the cannabis program. So I'm not sure if that qualifies in there too. So they've got it all going on there, but it's really nice environment. And it was interesting being part of the first class because, of course, there's advantages and disadvantages. We were actually troubleshooting boilers and stills and installing equipment that wasn't installed properly. So we learned some things there. And yet, at the same time, things weren't smooth. And so we had to struggle through some things. But that actually, I thought, added to the value of being the first students. So during that time, I sold the Blue Dog, sold both locations, and that deal closed in May of 19, which was right around the time I was graduating. So then I spent the next year, as was mentioned in the introduction, looking for a location, which in Brantford, small industrial units are at a premium, and they have been for a number of years. There's very little industrial space to begin with in Brantford, but to find something in the 4,000 to 6,000 square foot range is very difficult. So as soon as one came up, it would disappear. Plus, I didn't want to be buried back in an industrial area. I wanted more exposure. And I finally found this property. which was an existing motorcycle shop, a retail shop, and a repair shop for motorcycles. And the landlord had some space next door. They owned Carrier Tire Craft. So they've actually moved the business next door. A lot of their business over the last 5 years has gone online, so they didn't need the big retail spot anymore. And so I took over the entire building here in June of 20. Spent 6 months renovating it, had to do major renovations. The city throughout this process was very helpful, even during COVID times. I actually got a building permit within 10 days, believe it or not. Now, I had 3 consultants sign off on this building permit, so everything was tickety-boo, but they were very good in moving things along. And I obtained my federal spirits manufacturing license in December of 20, which, if you look at the history of some of the distilleries that have started in Canada and specifically in Ontario, they have a 3 or 4 year development period where they were struggling through licensing, struggling on getting an appropriate spot being built. We did it in 6 months. And that was because we knew what we were doing. Plus, everything just was teed up ahead of time and we just plowed through it. So we actually began online sales in January of this year. So we have been open a year now. Most of that time, we've only been a glorified liquor store. So quite frankly, we've never shut down during COVID, but because we're a liquor store, and as you know, the LCBO is not shutting down. If they shut down, the government would be broke in about a day and a half. So we've actually been open for bottle sales, but of course that's not good enough. We want people in here using the tasting bar, using our cocktail lounge, experiencing our products, being able to interact with them, and then really get an education and enjoy the space. So sales were mediocre, to say the least, for the six months at the beginning of the year. And then as we came out of phase 3, the end of July, then we could open the full cocktail lounge, and we've been rocking it ever since, which is nice. So if you look at I don't know if anybody recognizes this building as you dive down West Street. If you're coming past the old CKPC and then you hit Carrier Tire Craft, this was the motorcycle shop. I think at one point they even had a motorcycle kind of hanging out the front of this building. So we stripped all that, had to clean that decal off the garage door. We painted the outside, put up our signage. And so that's what kind of the front of the building looks like now. It's actually a little prettier than that now because we've got some proper parking curbs and stuff like that put in. That's what the building looks like now. This is what it used to look like. So they had jam-packed inside with a lot of motorcycles and helmets and a lot of retail gear. Those old stairs that you see there, just people are interested in those. Those were reclaimed stairs from the St. Jacobs fire. So they're huge, heavy wooden timbers, treads, which were no good to me because this is right in the middle of the entire area. So I had to actually rip those out. You can see there they were there, and they're gone now. And so we basically had to gut the place. On the right is a new wall. You'll notice the thickness of that wall. That is because that is separating the production area from the private or from the public area. This is the highest rated firewall you can get. Keep in mind that as a spirits manufacturer, we're producing, when we do vodka, we're producing 95% ethanol, which is, considering that you put 89 in your car, then 95 is very volatile, very dangerous. So we have a real separation between the public area and the production area. So once that was built, you'll see the public side on the right-hand side, which is our tasting bar and cocktail lounge. Upstairs there on that mezzanine is a cocktail lounge. And you see in the picture on the right, you'll notice the stairs in the corner. That's where we had to move. We had to construct new stairs back there just so that we could open up the space. And then on the left, that's our new production area. So that's where we actually moved the stills into. And in this case, this is the back shop. So you can see that's where they had the lifts for the motorcycles. We removed all that, and you can see now we've got our bottling area in there where we bottle up all our spirits. We've got a whole rack with all our botanicals in there that we play with. And it's not as clean looking as that right now because there's also about 29 full barrels of aging spirits jammed in there. because we've produced that throughout the year. And so you can see that we really transformed the space. We wanted to make it a little more upscale, a little bit more inviting, so people can come and relax and have a nice cocktail, and really then spend some time at the tasting bar educating them on our different spirits. So currently right now from Ontario, there's currently 650 craft breweries in Ontario, and yet there's only 38 craft distilleries. The reason for that is mostly regulatory, as well as taxes. We sell a $40 bottle of gin and we get very little of that. The government gets the majority of it. Then we have to take our cost of goods out of that. So it's not a very lucrative sale when you sell a bottle of gin. That being said, I mean, you need volume, but that's why you'll also, when you go to these craft distilleries, you'll see a premium price on most of their spirits. So you can go buy a $32 gin from the liquor store. Our white tea gin is $39.95. So you're paying a few extra dollars for that bottle, but it's because we don't have the volume. Plus we put a lot, it's a craft product. It's a handcrafted product. And some of the breweries, we've got 5 breweries just in Brant County, as many of you may know: Mash Paddle, Steel Wheel, Flux, Paris Beer Company in Bell City. And yet we've only got 38 craft distilleries in all of Ontario. So we've spent the year, we've currently got 14 different spirits on the shelf, which we're really, after a year of production, we're really happy with that. We also have a lot of spirits in our back room, which people always ask us about whiskey and rum. We are making a lot of whiskey and rum, but in Canada, rum has to age legally for a year before you can sell it, or at least call it rum. In Canada, whiskey has to age for at least 3 years before you can legally call it a whiskey. So we could actually, we've got some whiskey back there that we could release now and we could sell it, but we just couldn't sell it as whiskey. We would have to call it moonshine or white dog or white lightning or whatever we wanted to call it, but legally we couldn't call it a whiskey. Same with our rum. Our rum though, we got some in the barrels last January, February, and we've got some in some smaller barrels, which instead of the full size barrel, if you put it in a smaller barrel, it actually accelerates the aging because of the ratio of spirit to wood. It actually helps out with the aging process quite a bit. And so we're going to have our rum release probably in March of this year. We're really looking forward to that. We've tasted it. We taste it all the time. And it is amazing rum. It's going to be really, really good. And our whiskey is coming along fine. But again, we're probably not going to release that until it's actually time to do it. Rather than release a moonshine type product, we'd rather wait until it's proper whiskey. This year, we're also working on a kitchen. I did have if some of you drove by and saw a big red sea can beside the building, I had installed a sea can that was intended to be a pizza oven / kitchen. Brant County Health Board unit actually approved it. I had it all ready to go. And then the city came along and said, well, you can't have that there. It's got to be on wheels. And so I said, well, I'll put wheels on it. But then the more I thought about it, I'd rather just put something else in there. So now I'm the proud owner of a concession trailer. So the concession trailer has a full kitchen in it, and that's going to roll in the new year, starting next week. That's going to be parked in the spot that the sea can was in, and we're going to get it hooked up and hire somebody to actually run a concession trailer so that we have food at the distillery. We've really just been surviving on charcuterie boards and people bringing in their own food up till now. But we'd really like to have a tapas or small plate menu so that you can come and have a nice cocktail as well as some nice small plates or tapas. We're also, we did get a listing at the LCBO in October of this year. That is a interesting process in the sense that you go through a lot of certification, lab testing, sensory analysis. If they simply don't like how your product tastes, they won't list you. But we did get our white tea gin, our London dry gin, and our vodka listed at the LCBO. Once you get listed there as a small distiller, though, you still need to go to the individual store and ask that store manager to put your product on the shelf. We did that with limited success. We're in about 10 stores right The reason for that is because we were literally going at the end of October to try and ask the store managers to do it. And they had all this product being shoved down from head office for Christmas sales. And so most store managers would say, Craig, I'm 60 SKUs over my maximum. I can't add another one. Come back to January. So that will expand in January, but it's nice to have an LCBO listing. In this business, it's really interesting in the sense of you only need to deal with one distributor. The bad news is you only have one distributor. So if you want to sell your products, you really have to follow the LCBO guidelines and hope you're a success there. Otherwise, your only way of distributing is through licensees and selling at the distillery itself. So this year, our plans, we're sitting down next week. We've got a whole list of products that we're musing about. But obviously next year, our rum will be out. We'll be developing that. We continue to work with Brant Flour Mills. We're developing more of a bourbon style whiskey. So it's dark rye and corn, but we're also mixing some wheat in there now because I like a wheated bourbon. And so that's we'll develop throughout the year. We'll continue to barrel more whiskey and more rum. We did the ginseng vodka already. The black walnut Amaro, we've got pails and pails of black walnuts that are steeping in very high proof alcohol right now to make a walnut Amaro, which is a drinkable bitter. It's a beautiful, beautiful product, but they literally have to steep for a year in order to extract that flavor. So that won't be out until the fall time because we didn't do that until harvest time a few months ago in September when we harvested those walnuts. So we'll have that product coming out next year. The dill vodka, we actually got on the shelf a couple of weeks ago and it sold out immediately. So it's a dill pickle vodka. It sounds kind of goofy, but people just scooped it up and we're sold out right now. There's new product coming up. There's more coming on the shelf next week, but we've got a lot of disappointed customers because they wanted to buy some more of it. So we also just developed a coffee liqueur. And I've got it wrong here. We didn't end up using 7th Coffee. We used Altitude Coffee Roasters out of, I believe their roaster is in Port Burwell. But it's locally roasted coffee and it's a beautiful coffee liqueur. We use a lot of cocoa nibs in there. So it's got a chocolate underbase to it. It's beautiful. People are loving that product. So that's kind of the plans for this year. We'll be developing new spirits. We'll get the kitchen going. And then hopefully expand our distribution through the LCBO. That's the high level overview of what we're doing here. I believe, yeah, that's my last slide. So I'd be happy to